Hey everyone! I'm going to go live with my friend Lauren Taylor, and she should be on here in just a few minutes. But so right now I'm actually in a parking lot in front of an Urban Air. We had to have an appointment in Kansas City today, and so my son is inside playing with his grandparents and cousin, and I'm out here doing all the research on the NAR settlement, and I wanted to talk about that.
Hey.
My filter.
You look fabulous.
Oh, okay, there. It's better now. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes. I tried to go live yesterday, I think, and I was trying to use my Beats and nobody could hear me. It was terrible. And then I have this crazy filter on now. So this is a disaster.
It's one of those days. It's Monday.
StreamYard is my medium, not Instagram. But that's okay. You tell me I need to do this.
Yes. This is good. This is good for everyone. All right, guys. So, man, there's been a lot of changes since we last talked. So, Jess, do you want to give everyone a recap of what's going on?
Yeah. So Lauren and I wanted to go live and talk to you all about the NAR settlement. Obviously, if you're in real estate, you know this was dropped like a bomb on Friday, and we're all like, what? Got a lot of text messages. What's going on? So I did my research. I read the facts, and I listened to our brokerage. We're with EXP. And so our broker had, I think one of the CEOs, I don't know his exact title, and attorneys, they did a presentation today on what this means for buyer's agents, for listing agents. And so I think the bottom line, Lauren, my takeaway, and it's what I had said Friday night, I remain the same. My takeaway is don't panic. You will survive this. Things are going to shift. I mean, obviously things are going to be changing, but if you'll go back to the basics, like we've always taught, I have always taught to have a buyer consultation. Your buyer needs to hire you. And now what I love about this is it's evening the playing field. Everyone has to start where I've been saying we should start anyway. Mm-hmm. So now people they're not going to be able to cut corners. They're going to buyer's agency or they can't represent them. And something that was really interesting that I did not realize is that going back one second, if you don't know, just pretend like you don't know anything. NAR settled this class action lawsuit, or they proposed a settlement. I guess it's not official yet. And part of it, besides the monetary settlement, was that we're no longer going to be offering compensation on the MLS. That field is going to be totally gone. It does not mean that the seller can't offer compensation. They can still pay a buyer's agent. And in markets like mine, where it's primarily first-time home buyers, VA is very common, USDA is very common, FHA is very common in my market, I believe sellers will still offer compensation because we know as realtors who are going to be advising our sellers that the buyers can't afford it. Now, in different markets, that may change a little bit. I don't know. I do
Can you sit in that for a minute?
Yeah, please do.
Absolutely. So, first of all, as agents, you and I have always been value-based agents. So, right. So your ability to move through this obstacle is really going to be tied to your ability to communicate your value. And so I think it's going to start with the listing agent. Yeah. Absolutely. We do not have to offer compensation. Guess what? That hasn't changed. You could list on, there was this is what caused the issue, right? There were some MLSs where you couldn't set it below a certain amount. And so that's what created the issue, is that technically per antitrust laws, there can't be a minimum amount, even if the minimum amount is $1, right? So up until this point, you can offer everything is negotiable, and you can still do that. You can still offer a very minimal amount. You can offer zero amount. But what is going to get your home sold, right? So this starts with the listing agent, I think, educating the seller about how they're going to be able to market the property. But not only that, is protecting the seller from future litigation, okay? There were many times where I had buyers walk in, especially as the market heated up, and they were like, we are unrepresented. We want to work directly with you. We want to work directly with the seller because we want to get this house. And there was many times where I said, That doesn't help you here, because I have already advised my sellers of the dangers of working with a buyer who's unrepresented and or in dual agency in a lot of states where it's not even legal anymore. And so I can make recommendations to a couple agents if you like, but the seller has already put aside compensation, because at the time that was how it was happening. So I want to advise you to bring your own counsel to represent you, because in my opinion, it actually protects the seller from future litigation. You want two hands in this pot. You want someone who's going to come after you and find the nitty gritty, because this during the transaction is when we all work it out. What you don't want is someone coming back to you 90 days after you sold and saying, I was misrepresented. I was created an incentive environment to not have representation. Like, that's not where consumers win here. That's not where buyers win here. And that's not where sellers win here. In my opinion, like, that's where the conversation starts, is with sellers. Why it's in your best interest to work with a buyer who's, number one, represented, and number two, if a buyer can't, if we're in a market where they can't afford to have representation, why I still feel like it's in your best interest to offer that.
Yeah. What's really interesting that I didn't realize until today is that as a buyer's agent, you have to have had that conversation in the buyer consultation, had your buyer sign an agreement with you, negotiated with that buyer a compensation, and then you can ask the seller to pay for it in the contract or however is outlined in your state. Some states I'm hearing, it's not like this in my state, but some states like Florida and I think North Carolina, from what I've heard so far, they can't negotiate commission in contracts. I think that will change. Just so if you're in those states, I think that the contracts will catch up with this law. Yeah. I mean, they just have to. But in my state, we can put the commission in there, and so you can't get more than you negotiated with your buyer. And I was like, oh my gosh, this changed everything for me, because I was thinking, okay, well, maybe do a flat fee with the buyer. By the way, I already did percentages with my buyers, and 9 times out of 10 it was paid by the seller. But I have had buyers make up the difference. But I was trying to come up with some objection handlers for those that maybe refused to sign. And I thought, well, we'll just do a flat fee or a smaller amount and still try to get compensated by the seller. And what EXP is telling me anyway is that you can't. You have already negotiated it. You can't get paid more than you negotiated with your buyer. Now, you can go down. So let's say you negotiated at X percent with your buyer, or X amount with your buyer, and then you got that paid by the seller, or you didn't get it paid, or you could reduce it down. So anyway, I thought that was really interesting.
It's interesting. The funny thing is that this is a little bit of a caveat, but there was a very big broker in San Diego, because in California, it was different. We have our purchase agreement. And that's the other thing I think is tough right now, is that we're having national conversations.
Right.
And there's some states where it's really not much going to change here. Very minimal things will change here. I think what's going to change is the conversation when you're setting up showings. I used to have a showing table, where it was address, important notes, times. Now it's going to be hey, does the seller have some sort of compensation they've outlined, in the same way when I call a FSBO, right? Some people think for sale by owners are not willing to pay buyer's agents. That's not necessarily the case. You just have to call them and they'd be like, oh yeah, we're doing, blankety blank, right? It's great, put it in the column, right? But I think that the buyer does have a right to know, to say, oh, okay, so I've gone through the 15 properties that you're offering. I've talked to each of that you're interested in. I've talked to each of the agents. This is what we're looking like. And given the contract that we've signed, that might indicate to the buyer properties that they want to see or not see. And I know that's not something that the world wants to hear right now. But the reality is if the buyer has that limitation and they feel like they're going to be on the hook for the commission, it's still not in their best interest maybe to go unrepresented. And they may actually pass on houses themselves, not an agent deciding it. The buyer may decide to pass on it because they know that that's part of the deal.
Well, and I've also seen some realtors say they're going to put that in their buyer agreement, which I think I'm going to as well, where it's actually a question, and maybe even have them initial decide it. Do you want me to send you properties where the seller is refusing to offer compensation, since we know you're not able to, or we know that you need that negotiated into your contract? And again, I mean, the seller can still pay for the commission or offer that. Something else that EXP said today, which I found very interesting in regards to VA loans, because we all know the VA doesn't allow the veteran to pay the agent. So the recommendation I'm hearing right now is you write it into the contract and you say the seller agrees to pay your brokerage, and versus seller agrees to pay buyer X, YZ for their buyer commission. So it's literally being compensated directly from the seller. But again, negotiated in the contract. So that should bypass the issue with the VA.
Well, the VA will also catch up in the same way that the contracts are catching up, right? Yeah. They've created their guidelines around how it's existed up until this point. And so, I'm really big in the military space. I'm getting all these messages from but how does this impact the VA?
Right.
What this is not trying to do, guys, is discriminate to military home buyers.
Yeah.
Okay. Not at all. And as someone who sells thousands of VA homes a year, that's not the vibe. So we just also have to know, the judge is looking at it. They haven't even approved it yet. Things will move in succession. And I think that right now, the number one is getting confident in your ability to communicate your value proposition, getting confident in explaining why someone's using a buyer broker agreement for that secondary contract to protect the commission. But really, it's a value conversation. It is why it is in that person's best interest to be represented by you, and then let the contracts come into play. There's so much to happen before people start panicking about this. I know that there's so many agents out there right now. It's if you just took the next 14 days to truly outline your unique value proposition and create an agent resume. Why should someone choose you? Why should they hire you? Look at your data. The last 100 properties you've helped people purchase. Have you negotiated over $1 million off for your clients? Over $200,000 in repairs? Over $300,000 in closing credits? Guess what? This is now become you got to sell yourself. So as much as we used to look at those numbers on the listing side as a buyer's agent, and I don't believe that you have to list to exist. I'll die on that hill. I created virtual house hunting. There will always be someone who needs help buying a home.
Totally.
Right? But you have to be able to communicate your value that you bring to the conversation, or you won't be given that conversation anymore.
I've always been a listing agent, and I've always preached being a listing agent. So I'm going to have to agree to disagree. But I'm not saying you can't help buyers.
Us may not be in this industry much longer. No, I'm just kidding.
I think for me personally, I want to have inventory to attract the buyers. It's a lot harder for me to attract the buyers when I don't have something to share to them. You know what I mean? To generate that lead. But backing up a little bit, your value as a buyer's agent, what about getting creative about finding off-market properties that aren't even on the MLS, right? Because that's been the main issue for buyers right now is there's not enough inventory, and that's not going to change, not anytime soon for the foreseeable future. So, something I've been using is Celebrity Agent, where I can literally target a specific type of property for my buyer, sends them postcards and letters. And you can do this very manual as well. Mm-hmm. But my point in that is look for ways that you can add value that's kind of outside of the box. And then it's a no-brainer. Here's what I do. And the other thing that I think is going to come back for probably now buyers and sellers is a tiered commission strategy, right?
Yeah,
giving them different options.
That looks like, because I think a tier, especially when the market was heating up, the tiered commission strategy on the listing side was just pure brilliance to me. So for those of you guys, and I actually learned this from Mary Maloney. Mary, I don't know if she's watching right now, but we were talking about, I feel like I shouldn't have said her name because I'm about to give her a tier listing.
Yeah, she's so abundant. Yeah. I think she would gladly sure.
Anyway, everyone go follow Mary Maloney. But she's a huge agent in Southern California, and she has a flat rate brokerage or a flat rate listing service that she's kind of always in competition with. So let's say you're in market with a Redfin, right? And they do a 1% flat listing commission. That's a pretty well known. They all do that. So, sometimes that can be hard to compete because people assume that you're going to get the same amount. Well, it's freaking brilliant. She would just come in and say, wonderful, no problem. What do they want to list it at? They want to list it at 1.1. Wonderful. If we list it at 1.1, I have no problem with a 1% commission rate. If I'm able to achieve 1.2 for you, I would like my full rate. That means that you would make this amount of money more and I would make this amount of money more. Is that something you're comfortable with? So I only win when you win. And I was just so simple, so clean. All I'm asking is that I want to be able to win when you win. But now how does that look on the buyer's side?
Yeah, I think that you can do it several different ways, but one is a la carte. You're probably going to have those people that just want you to show that one property. Maybe they don't want to commit to you exclusively. I think that may become a thing. I mean, we are not going to be allowed to show them a property until we actually have an agreement. This is something that was just discussed, by the way, Lauren, in the Fast Forward Amendment. They were talking about the a la carte, like basically paying by the door, paying for a specific property, having an agreement for a specific property.
I'm wondering if like Zillow and things like that are going to have ones that are automatically signed on behalf of the agents and when they do like a one-time showing agreement.
Maybe, because that's going to totally shift for those Zillow Flex people that were speed to lead. In fact, they can't even talk about a buyer's agency or having them. They can't even ask if they're working with another agent because those phone calls are recorded. I just learned this the other day. Another reason why I wouldn't want to be a Zillow Flex agent.
Well, we are very blessed that you and I have put a great deal of time, energy, and effort and skill into growing our own pipelines, our own media, so we don't have to rely on someone else's. So
exactly, and I think that's a good point too. Where should we focus as realtors? I think relationships are still going to trump everything. It's a lot harder to have this buyer consultation with a cold lead coming in. That's maybe a paid lead source or just an internet lead. There's a lot of runway that has to happen for someone to have trust with you. And if you already have, 10-year history with them and you sold them their mother's and their aunt's house, it's like, it's a little different conversation. And I am fortunate in that fact that I have a lot of those people in my pipeline. I had somebody ask me though, Lauren, do I think that a bunch of what will this look like for new agents? And do I think that the newer agents, not just like the people coming into the industry, but maybe in the last couple of years, are they going to just bow out? I think that the brand new agent, Lauren, is probably going to do better than the old dogs in a lot of cases because they're not going to know any different, right?
Yes. So here's the thing is that we only know the markets we know, right? I was more concerned when the market slowed and the transactions slowed. I was more concerned with my agents who just came off like their second and third year in real estate. And it was a record breaking year for them. Like we're talking about like $0 to like $400,000 or $500,000 a year in 3 years, where now they think this is a normal market, right? And now they have to pivot back and adjust. They have to adjust their mental mindset of like, and it was tough, Jess. I'm sure you saw, I know you coach some high level agents. It was tough to watch them mentally adjust. Like this could be the new normal. So you need to be able to like, make sure that your energy and your emotion and this is like sustainable because you're going to have to work 3 times as hard for the same amount that you're being paid before. And that's really the transition that we saw there. But my newer agents, like they don't know any different. Like they don't know any different. To them, this is just how they've always operated. So I don't think that this should be a deterrent to someone getting into real estate. I think that we've been wanting something that's going to raise the bar for quite some time. And if someone's frustrated by this change, look, they're trying to do it because they believe it's in the best interest of the seller or of the consumer. Okay. Right. And so if you are an agent who feels like you are in the best interest, like you want to do what's in the best interest of the seller and the buyer, then just help them understand why this change was made and why you're still valuable to the transaction. I think the bigger issue in my mind is that about 7 years ago, when Zillow still existed, not as a brokerage, when they were trying to convince us all that they had no desire to take our business or to become us, which was a lie, by the way, that there became a big undertow of conversation of the lack of value that agents bring. And the agents started to believe it. That being said, meaning that they forgot how to communicate their own value. Now all of a sudden properties are available in the MLS. Well, was your value just opening a door? No, your value wasn't just opening a door. It was so many more of these things, so many more of the ways that we protect our clients. But it's become a lost art. And I think that is the art that we need to find again. And as obviously running Savvy Homebuyer, like that's what I've been focused on with my agents for years, is like bringing the value back to the buyer's side. Why does someone need to be represented? Why should they have someone who represents them? How do they interview the person that finds the best fit for them? Because I believe the buyer should be represented, period.
Yeah. I do a lot of dual. I mean, it's not dual agency in Kansas or Oklahoma. Those are the two states I'm licensed in. It's transaction broker and or buyer is unrepresented. And I mean, I operate in a way that it's never an issue, but I can see how maybe an unethical agent, it would be an issue. But for me, as long as I'm disclosing up front, and so in the case where the buyer is unrepresented, so that in my state, they don't have a buyer's agency with me. They called me from a sign and or maybe the buyer or seller even referred them to me. We have no affiliation, nothing signed, and I'm representing the seller. I just tell them, treat me as if I'm the seller. Don't tell me your top dollar. I'm not going to give you advice, because any advice I give you or anything I say is for the best interest of the seller.
Yes.
And I think as long as you're disclosing that up front, some buyers are savvier than others, yep. Lauren. The first-time home buyer definitely needs more hand-holding. They need more help and guidance. But, somebody that's bought 20 properties, they may not.
This is like a state difference, because in California and I just learned about this because in Georgia, I was talking to my girl there. She was like, no, but I'm not doing dual agency. I'm doing a transaction, like a
transaction broker.
I was like, I don't understand, because in California I would do dual agency and I did limit of them because I would have hives, Jeff. Because it's not
you can't represent
possible.
Two people. No, I agree.
Possible.
I agree with that. Yeah.
And so I love. And that to me is like, California has been on like the forefront of real estate litigation, but I'm like, they really need to look at some of these other states, because I do think that absolutely, like, I would feel comfortable like buying my own home. And maybe I'm like, we have so many people who have been in real estate and bought homes, but now they're not licensed anymore. They're not practicing anymore. They're super qualified, right? I would love for California to look to implement that model, because it would alleviate the anxiety of having an unrepresented buyer who can't write their own contracts, who can't do this, who can't do that, right? I would love that, because that was a huge issue.
Just going to touch on is the tiered commission again on the listing side in a different way than you explained it that Mary did, which I think is brilliant. But my thought process was more, I'm going to negotiate what I think a buyer's agent would want plus mine, and I'm going to tell my client, hey, this is what I anticipate it being, should there be another agent involved. This is what I'm going to charge if you have me handle the paperwork, but I'm representing you. Mm-hmm. And then this is what I'm going to charge if, maybe they have their own compensation or whatever, right? The buyer's agent has their own compensation. So what I'm excited about is the buyer agent is actually like not automatically entitled to any certain percentage on the commission. They have to write it into the contract. Mm-hmm. So that means it's frustrating, I think, just because it's different than what we've always known. I've been in the business for 21 years, right? And so I kind of got used to saying, like, I don't negotiate my commission. And, like, that just wasn't ever something that I brought up. But now it's basically negotiable from before the listing through closing. You know what I'm saying? So as a buyer's agent, I may even come in there with a really strong percentage. If that house has been sitting on the market for a while, I mean, I'm just saying it's not going to be fixed. Yeah. And just because it's what it said on the MLS, which isn't even going to be a thing anymore, you're going to be able to say, this is what I want. Yeah. This is what I want for my commission to be. So,
yeah. It will be interesting to see it all shake out. I think that the most important thing is to be on the forefront of the conversations. I think that, like, even like this, right? Like kind of spitballing, if you will, how... kind of role playing. All of us have been role playing for so long, the old system, right? How do you make the new system as comfortable and feel as confident? But there'll be best practices, and there'll be best practices quickly. I think that what the world doesn't want is a whole bunch of we don't want it to hurt home buyers. That's not the goal. That was never the goal here.
I don't think that's what real estate agents want, and the majority of the public, but I do think there may be some agendas out there at play, and I think we should be aware of that. And here's the thing:
can we talk
real
about
estate. Yeah, I mean, we can if you want
to.
Let's
do it. I called Zillow out. You're not going to hold out on me on that.
Okay. There are some powers that be that say you will own nothing and be happy. I think that there are people in this world that exist in this world that are at power in this world who want home ownership to go away, and they want us to be renters because renters are easier to control, and real estate agents are what's standing in between these people. So I do believe that there is a little bit of an agenda to try to get us out of the way.
100% get loud with that. Well, first of all, I want to be very clear. I 100% agree with the comment that Justice made. If you look back on First of all, if you look back on any civilization that have moved from you can afford to buy property here, like the American type dream in any sort of Western civilized country or whatever, it has gotten to the point over time where it is much less attainable. Okay. And so for a long time, this has been attainable. And now I'm seeing that shift where we're seeing a lot more institutional buyers, right? We're seeing properties that come available they're being built that will never, ever change hands, that they are held by large corporations. And that, I've been very open about me feeling like this is one of the last generations of new homebuyers. And honestly, guys, we bought 2 properties for the boys. We're buying our 3rd because I want my kids to be able to own a property someday.
Yeah.
And I am not sure that in 20 years, that's still going to be an option, or it's going to be 10 times harder. And I absolutely agree with that statement that this could be a push in that direction.
And if they can wedge us against each other, right, it's just going to make it go that much quicker. So, to me, we need to band together as real estate agents. We need to find a way to make this work. Yes, for us, we need to make an income. Absolutely. We can't work for free, but it's for especially the first-time home buyers. I've always been passionate about that. That's been kind of my bread and butter, who I've always gone after, who I've always spoken to, because I think that real estate is the catalyst between wealth and poverty. And I want as many people to be homeowners as possibly can. So
how can we help consumers understand the kind of pivotal moment that we are sitting in right now for them? Because it is, look, I know there's a lot of people out there. It's like, oh, agents are just looking to make a commission. 5 years from now, you're going to look back and you will say, it was not about making a commission. Gosh, there's 1/3 of the properties available. Everything else is owned by major corporations. I wish I would have listened.
Maybe we should be more united in our speech about that and louder. I mean, I feel like a broken record sometimes because I talk to first-time home buyers all the time. That's my messaging on my social media. But seriously, I mean, there are so many benefits to homeownership versus renting. You have so much more control. And yeah, we should probably be sharing that more. And here's the thing, there's still incentives. I mean, I don't know, maybe those are going to go away too. But if you're in that demographic, if you are listing a property, again, you said it starts with a listing agent. I totally agree with that. Educate the seller. If you're in that demographic where it's going to be a first-time home buyer, encourage them to alleviate some of that burden, because the first-time home buyer doesn't have the money. They don't have the extra funds to put on top of their closing costs. The other thing I think we need to do, and Lauren, maybe you're somebody who can do this too, is we need to lean in on the lenders, because there has to be a way that we can put this into the loan.
Potentially. Yeah.
So I've been talking to the lenders I'm working with already. Okay, I know there's limits on what a seller can contribute on FHA, et cetera. But, there has to be a way that we can wrap this in if a buyer doesn't have the funds available.
Yeah, there's definitely going to be a shakeup. It's just going to look different. And here's the thing. Educate yourself. Watch for people who are winning and pay real attention as to how they're winning early on, and don't be scared to pivot. Because I think the other thing that we're going to see here is, and this is a crazy, crazy statement, guys. Okay. But me and my husband have been talking about this all weekend, and what does this mean and how does this shift? I think that we're going to see in-house agents at lending offices where it's Lauren writes all of our contract and she's contracts for our buyers, and she's on salary and she'll set up the things for you. And here's our list of inspectors, but you manage that. And so there is a agent who is compensated as an employee of the mortgage company versus an agent who is making commissions. I believe that is kind of the flipped model of Redfin.
Well, I also think that teams are going to be even more important. You know that I'm a big believer in the micro team, and so I was modeling out for me, again, heavy listing agent. I love listings. So what if I shifted to a certain comp model for my listings and then did a flat fee for my buyers, and I have somebody on staff essentially already that handles all of my showings for my buyers, and I looked at the numbers.
That would be brilliant.
I make more money that way, actually, with the model. You know, who knows how that would work, and it's very affordable for my buyers. So yeah, there's going to be a lot of options out there.
We have so many people who are watching right now quietly. This is like, we've held the most retention on this live in a long time, but not one person is saying a thing. Is it because, if you're a realtor and you're watching this, here's my question.
Yeah.
Is it because you're hearing so many opinions right now that you don't know what to think? And it's like, there's so many things that have to shake out. Why are we even talking about this? That's one way you can feel. Number two, you can be over it. Look, there's a big amount of real estate agents who had some great years. We're getting into our later years, right? Like our 50s and our 60s. Like, look, Lauren, I've paid off a couple properties. I'm just going to be done, but I just appreciate the conversation. There's probably the other agents who are sitting here being like, great, I'm going to use these tactics, right? I'm just super curious as to what you guys are thinking as you watch this conversation.
You're a realtor, you better bring value. True.
Yeah. We've always been a value-based.
I think
most
realtors bring value. I think most realtors aren't good at conveying their value.
That's it. Yes. So guys, if you are looking to build out, and let me give you an idea. Okay. So like I started Savvy Homebuyer in San Diego in like 2016. Okay. And so, but it was all around the unique value proposition of like representing home buyers, right? So we offer like a comprehensive home buying education program. We offered virtual and video house hunting. We covered the cost of a defensive strategy for our clients by bringing on a transaction coordinator. And I also included our like warranty. And sometimes I would only let my people pay for one inspection because I didn't want them to ever feel like they couldn't afford to go to another home because they couldn't afford another inspection, right? That's a unique value proposition.
Yeah.
Those like 5 or 6 bullet points coupled with, in the last 100 homes, we've negotiated off an average of 11%, right? Whatever those statistics are for you, that's your value proposition.
Yeah.
I took my value proposition, I branded into Savvy Homebuyer, expanded it nationwide, and now we have agents all over the country doing it.
You're so brilliant.
Okay?
I know, I love it. I'm going to go back to the buyer consultation and revamp ours, of course, and say, here's how you can work with us. Option 1, and it's going to probably be by the house, like a per house charge, and I'm going to probably even maybe before that show, option 1, you call the listing agent and you go this without a realtor. What does that look like for you? Option 2, you hire us by the door. Option 3, you go ahead and retain our services, and here's everything that we provide to you, including finding off-market properties, right? And so I think that's going to be our play, honestly. And by the way, somebody did have a great question. She said she's been living under a rock, wasn't quite sure what was announced. So just real quick, I know we have to go soon, but NAR, as everyone knows, there was a class action lawsuit last year. They found NAR to be guilty along with some other big brokerages, and were trying to sue us for like billions of dollars, it seemed like. And so NAR has arrived at a settlement proposal, $418 million. And part of that is they're saying that the MLS will no longer offer compensation on the MLS. It's not going to be a field on any MLS nationwide. And we don't have to belong to an MLS either. So as realtors, we no longer have to actually belong to an MLS. It becomes optional. Did you hear that part? That was part of it. Yeah.
Not hear that part.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's really interesting. There's a lot of moving parts. I'm still understanding some things. And as I mentioned earlier, you have to have a buyer's agency agreement with a buyer that agrees to pay you. And whatever you negotiated with your buyer is your cap of what you can get. You can't ask the seller, you can't negotiate 1% with a buyer and then put on the seller's contract 4%. You can't do that. So I thought that was a big news
It's all
to me
about
today.
transparency. It's
It is
all about transparency.
Which
I
in
think
a
the
lot of
unfortunate
ways,
thing is that like the clickbait articles are painting this like it is a like you no longer have to, your like sellers aren't paying this commission. No, it's a decoupling of the commission, right? It always used to be paid to the listing broker, and the listing broker then paid the buyer's broker. So that's no longer happening, and then both parties have to negotiate their rate. And
I haven't heard that a for sale by owner can directly upload to the MLS. I haven't heard that.
oh, is that a thing?
That's what Sarah just asked. I haven't heard that, but that's interesting if they can.
I guess if you don't have to be a member of your MLS, I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, the big thing is don't panic. Let's just see what happens. Nothing's going to come into effect until mid-July. And this is just a proposal. It's not been ratified. It's not been approved by the DOJ. I have a key takeaways. One, do a buyer consultation anyway. Like, you should be doing that anyway. Two, know your value and know how to communicate it. 3, start communicating better with other agents. Because so I heard someone say, it was Lee Brown, I think, and I love her dearly. I think her perspective is excellent. But one thing she mentioned was that the seller has to compensate the same to everyone because of fair housing. That's actually incorrect, according to what I heard from EXP today. I'm talking about the agent-wise, not buyers, and anything like that.
Oh my gosh, that's going to be a whole other can of worms.
The buyer's agent has to negotiate. Like, that's what I understood. It's like, it's not me saying as a listing agent, hey, we're going to offer 3%. We don't have to do that anymore. I should prepare my seller that, hey, this is what could happen, but then let's see what happens with the buyer. Any offer that's presented to me, they're going to write in the commission. They're going to write in any concession that needs to be made. It's just going to be another line item on the net sheet. Mm-hmm. So it's just going to be a different way of negotiating. Be willing to adapt and change. I know what I was going to say, and this will be my last point, and I'll try to shut up, Lauren. There's been a lot to process. The main thing I want is for everyone to not try to fight this because it's out of our hands. Now we have to deal with what we've been dealt. We have to adapt with what we've been dealt. I agree with everyone out there. I don't think this is great. Like, I liked the way it was. I don't think the model was broken necessarily. I saw it working out beautifully for all parties, including buyers. But that's beside the point. And what I hear see a lot of in these threads is how people are like, well, this isn't good for the buyer. This isn't. Okay, I agree with that, but we're past that point now.
Yep, I agree. Yeah, it's time. It's time to be solution-minded, right? I'm not a person, I can't stand sitting in the problems. Like, if you want to call me and talk about problems, like, we are just not going to have a long conversation. So I want your assessment of get clear on, like, what your unique value is, right? Balance out your business with listings. You had another one. And speak openly with agents, right? It's all going to shake out. If you don't feel like you have a community of agents that you can turn to, here's the other important thing, and then we can end this here. But if you don't feel like you have someone like Jess or I in your business that you can turn to and ask questions for, that you know that we're not going to be like troubleshooting this and bringing this back to our agents. I know for a fact within 2 weeks, Jess is going to have a full plan that's like distributed to all of her agents, and then plug this in here and plug this in here and let's role play it, right? If you don't have that, that's probably a sign of a bigger issue in your business because it is changing, okay? And so maybe this is going to be a time for agents to reassess the value that they're going to get in the new market, right? Whether that's a coaching program, whether that's a brokerage that you're with, whether that's just going to networking events, right? If you are isolated right now as an agent, I bet you are like a million times more scared. I'm not scared because I'm not isolated, right? If I'm working with the top agents in the industry, people who are not going to go away because of this change, but we're going to adapt and grow, and we're going to take the market share from the agents who are scared. Sounds horrible. But like, we're not going to lose. It's okay. So don't be scared. Just reach out for help. And you need to find that community where you can have like open and transparent conversations to work through this new set of problems.
Yeah.
That would be my only tip.
I had a few people text text me, I think buyer's agents are going away. I think a bunch of people are going to get out of the business. And maybe so. The ones that are too afraid to try something new and adapt will probably bow out. And something that was said on the Fast Forward call earlier that I thought was so good is that compensation should be based on skill, and now that's going to be more relevant than ever, because the way it was, everyone got the same compensation on the MLS for co-broke, regardless if they were a terrible agent or they were the best in the business. And so now the buyer agent will be able to negotiate that based on their skill level.
So one last thing before I let you go. As I was thinking this, like as a buyer's agent, right? Understanding what's important to the seller, it takes away a little bit of your leverage, like mid-transaction, right? But like, what if your tiered commission structure was tied to performance in the contract? Meaning, like, close it. Like, how many times did we have lenders when everything was like crazy? It's like, if I don't close on time, your seller gets $1,500, right? For every day that we don't close on time due to the buyer's agent or due to the buyer side, I relinquish this amount. I mean,
there's going to be a million different ways.
If everyone has the right motivation, then, I don't think it's bad.
Yeah. But to wrap it, Lauren is in my upline at EXP. Stephanie and I, if you follow Real Estate Mega Moms, we are with EXP, and we're not broker specific. We're not just for EXP agents. But what I will say is I've never been more thankful to be with this company than I have been today. So that the news was released Friday, and within hours, probably not even that, I was getting emails from my EXP upline and leadership about, okay, we've got you. We're doing the research. We're going to have answers for you. And then today they delivered on that in ways that blew my mind and opened my mind up to, okay, I'm going to be able to navigate this. I'm going to be able to lead my agents through this, my downline, my coaching group. We're all going to be fine. And I'm so grateful. Okay. I'm so grateful for this company and Lauren, for you, because you're an extension of them in my upline. Yeah.
I'm glad that we have an agent community that we feel confident in. And every time that something that goes wrong in my business, something unexpected goes on in my business, I always say, like, what a wonderful opportunity to grow. Mm-hmm. Like, same here. What a wonderful opportunity to grow. We can't control it. We just grow with it.
Oh, yeah. Murdoch, she says, Leo, which is one of our CEO, I believe, he said that he was waiting on a call from the head of VA. Yeah, so they're doing the work. Yeah, perfect. Yeah, awesome.
All right, team. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, Lauren. I appreciate you.